Hey cat.
Hey everyone, and happy Thanksgiving if you live in the States. If you live in Canada, you can just pretend it's October, and if you live anywhere else, you can just pretend it's a cheat day and overindulge. Today we'll be cooking a Thanksgiving themed meal from the World of Warcraft cookbook, and since I'm on a little bit of a time constraint, I'm only going to do one recipe. But this recipe calls for two other recipes in this book, so it'll be a relatively full meal that's just missing a couple of sides. We'll be doing the slow roasted turkey, which is something you can only make during Pilgrim's Bounty in-game, and also pretty much in life as well, because I can never find frozen turkey for sale outside of November or December. But I digress. This recipe calls for a spice bread stuffing, which then calls on the recipe for a Mulgore spice bread, so we'll be doing all three today. For our Mulgore spice bread, I set aside all of the ingredients, and I'm just going to run through them real quick so we know we have everything. I have some unsalted butter here, which I'm going to melt, and right next to that I have some milk. Then we have our Mulgore spice mix right here. Next to that we have a little jar of instant yeast, some salt, I also have light brown sugar here, but you can use dark brown if you'd like. And then last we have all-purpose flour. For the Mulgore spice mix, we're going to need a half teaspoon of ground ginger, a half teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a half teaspoon of ground cardamom, and then we'll add a pinch of ground cloves and a pinch of ground mace. To start the spice bread, we're going to put 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and 2 teaspoons of instant yeast into a cup and a half of warm milk. It doesn't say how warm in the recipe, but I kept mine a little under 110 degrees Fahrenheit by microwaving in 20-second intervals and checking with a thermometer. We're going to let this mixture sit for about 5 to 10 minutes, or until it gets nice and frothy. Then I just measured out 3 cups of all-purpose flour. The yeast is nice and frothy, so now I'm just going to put it into a large bowl and then add in my Mulgore spice mix and my melted butter. Now we'll just add in half of the flour now, and gradually add in the rest while I'm mixing it by hand. When it starts to slightly release from the sides without too much trouble, I'll put it onto a floured surface and start kneading it while adding enough flour to make sure it isn't too sticky, which should take about 5 minutes. It also seems like I added about half a cup of extra flour just to make sure it wasn't completely sticking to my countertop. At the end, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a poke and see if it springs back. Then I'm going to put my dough into a greased bowl and cover it up with plastic wrap and then let it sit for an hour until it doubles up in size. Now that the dough has been sitting for about an hour, it definitely has doubled up in size. From here, I'm going to punch it down and then I'm going to slide it out onto my silicone mat on top of this baking sheet tray and then mold it into some sort of loaf-esque shape. After it somewhat resembles a loaf shape, I'm just going to let it sit out on this tray for about 30 more minutes. Now that it's proofed again for that 30 minutes, I'm just going to take my lame and do a quick French cut score. If you don't have a lame, you can just use a razor blade or even a sharp knife. Then I'll pop it into my preheated 425-degree oven for about 25 minutes. And this is our Mulgore spice bread. Hopefully I did everything correctly, and this is supposed to be how it looks. It has formed a bit of a shell, but it should soften up a little bit when it cools down. Now we'll start prepping our turkey, and the first step, as always, is to make sure we have all of our ingredients. We have our turkey, some white wine, honey, our autumnal herb spice mix, then we have some apple cider, some unsalted butter, an onion, some chicken broth, and we also have salt and cornstarch for the gravy at the end. For our autumnal spice mix, we have 2 tablespoons of dried rosemary, 2 teaspoons of dried thyme, 1 teaspoon of dried marjoram, half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a quarter teaspoon of ground nutmeg, a quarter teaspoon of ground ginger, and 1 teaspoon of blue cornflower petals, which is optional. I couldn't find it in any stores around me, so I just had to order it off of Amazon. To do the autumnal herb mix correctly, you add all of the ingredients except the cornflower petals into a coffee or spice grinder to turn it into a powder. Then you add the cornflower petals to the powdered mix. I tried using a blender because I didn't have either grinder, which didn't exactly work, so I left it as is, which worked for me in the end. To start the turkey itself, we're just going to cut up this onion into cubes. It doesn't really matter how you cut them, since it's just going to be in the bottom of the roasting pan anyways. The first thing we'll add to the pan is 2 cups of chicken broth, then 2 cups of apple cider, then we'll add 1 tablespoon of honey, and then we'll throw our onion into it. With this turkey on top, there's usually the neck and a bag of giblets somewhere stuffed inside of itself, so make sure you locate it and then remove those. Usually when I buy a turkey, I have to use some butcher's twine to hold the legs together, but this one came with a little plastic holder which holds it together, which is nice. There aren't really any instructions in this recipe to tell me what to do, but I suggest moving the wings behind the body so that it's not covering any part of the bird and prevent it from browning. I didn't do it myself, but you may want to do it if you do this recipe. You also may want to remove any feathers that might have been missed in the initial cleaning of the bird. I also took some paper towels to dry the outside of the bird so this can get nice and brown and crispy. I've melted my butter here, and we're just going to add the white wine to it, and then we're going to add a tablespoon of the autumnal spice mix. I'm gonna mix this up and brush it all over the bird. This will also be our basting liquid we'll brush on every 30 minutes. So now that I've coated this in our liquid, I'm gonna put it into a preheated 425 Fahrenheit oven and set a timer for 30 minutes and then lower it down to 350 until it's done. The general rule for roasting a turkey is about 20 minutes for every pound. So at 12 pounds, this should take no longer than 4 hours. But I'll check the internal temperature after 3 and it should read 165 on the inner thigh and the breast. For the spiced bread stuffing, I'm just going to run through the ingredients real fast. First, we have our Mulgore spice bread here that we baked yesterday. Then we have some salt, milk, a pear, an apple, and an onion. We also have an egg. And for our herbs, we have some thyme, sage, and parsley. And lastly, we have some salted butter. Personally, I like unsalted butter since I can be the salt master in both cooking and gaming. The first thing we'll do is cut the bread that's been sitting out overnight into 1-inch cubes. If you made the bread the same day, you can always just throw it into an oven at 150 degrees for about 10 to 20 minutes and it should come out okay as well. I'm just gonna hold the bread into my baking tray until everything else is ready. Next I'll peel the apple and pear and cut out the core while dicing them up into the same size. I'll put the pears and apples into the same bowl, and after I finish doing that, I'm gonna move on to the onion and dice those up in a similar size as well. The last thing we'll prepare are the herbs, and I'm just gonna wash the sage, thyme, and parsley, then pat them dry. I'll twist the stems off the parsley here, and then remove the leaves off the sage and mince them by rolling them up and then chopping them through. To get the thyme leaves, I'm just gonna run my fingers down the stem and they'll come right off. Lastly, we'll do a rough chop on the parsley by rolling them up and then running my knife through it. I've put the herbs in a bowl as soon as I finish processing them. Now I'll start assembling the stuffing by putting it into a large bowl with the milk and letting it get soaked up. While it's doing that, I'm just gonna cook my onions. We're just gonna throw the butter into this pan until it gets melted. Then I'm gonna add my onions and let that cook for about 5 to 6 minutes until it gets nice and translucent. Then I'll take it off the heat and add it to my stuffing that's been soaking up the milk. I'm gonna whisk my egg a little first before throwing it in with the rest of the ingredients. The recipe doesn't specify it, but I assume you'd want it to be broken up so it can get better incorporated. I'll also add the salt before I start mixing it all together. Then we're just gonna put it back into my baking tray and cover it with foil, and then we'll bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, then uncover it, and then we'll bake it for about 10 more minutes. I personally had to bake it for about 30 minutes since I had other things baking in the oven unrelated to this video, but not unrelated to Thanksgiving. While that's baking, we're just going to move on to our apple cider. We have apple brandy, apple cider, holiday spices, and a brown sugar. The first thing we need to do is make our holiday spices, and that consists of black pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and nutmeg. To make the spices, we're just going to put them all into a bowl and then just mix it up. Making the hot apple cider has a very similar procedure. We're just going to take all the ingredients here in their measured proportions and then throw them into a pot and set it on a medium to medium high heat for about 10 minutes until it starts to simmer. It's been about 3.5 hours and my bird is looking pretty good. I'll take the temperature of the breast and inner thigh since that's the furthest point in. If it starts getting too dark before the inside is cooked to 165 degrees, you can always make a foil tent to prevent the outside from burning while still cooking it to the appropriate temperature so no one gets sick. I always double check just to make sure it's cooked because getting food poisoning sucks, especially when it wakes you up in the middle of the night and you have to work in a few hours, so make sure you always double check. My thermometer is reading a little bit higher than 165 at around 170 all around, so I know it's ready. If I had waited the extra 30 minutes for that 4-hour mark, it would have been so dry inside that no amount of gravy on earth could have saved it. Speaking of gravy, we can probably start on that since the turkey's finished. I'm just going to strain all the drippings from the roasting pan into a pot. Then I'm going to take about a teaspoon of cornstarch per cup of drippings and mix it with about a tablespoon of water to make a slurry, which is what makes the gravy thick. I'm just going to pour the slurry in and I'm going to put it on the stove at about medium-high heat. I'm going to make sure to whisk it pretty often so that nothing burns since the gravy itself has a lot of sugars in it from the other ingredients. When it hits a boil, it should start looking pretty thick, kind of like a savory caramel. That's when I know to take it off the heat and strain it one more time so that it's extra smooth. And there you have the slow roasted turkey gravy. As you can see, the hot apple cider is warming up back here, so I'm just going to get the garnish ready while I set aside this gravy. I have a peeler and an orange here, and I'm just going to peel off a little bit of the skin. Just be careful not to peel your skin off either because as you can see, I'm struggling a little bit just to peel it. You can't hear me, but I'm pretty winded just from trying to get that little tiny peel. So we're just going to take the orange peel here and fold it over, and then we'll squeeze it. It'll release a bit of the oil, and then we're just going to throw it in the glass. Then we're going to ladle a few scoops into the glass, then we'll add a cinnamon stick. I added another orange peel because I worked really hard to get a lot of them, and I didn't hurt myself. I am pretty tired though. And there is our hot apple cider all ready and garnished up. And here is our completed menu. Slow roasted turkey and its gravy, Mulgore spice bread and its stuffing, and hot apple cider. That apple cider is looking pretty good, or maybe I just need a drink. The entire course took hours and I cooked regular Thanksgiving dishes on top of it, so I hope my pain and suffering tastes as salty and delicious as these dishes.
Okay. Hello, Buba. Can I start now? Let's start with the turkey first.
The meat is moist and gravy is
Let me
good.
try this.
I love gravy too. Gravy is very good.
Don't you going to eat?
Oh, I thought I'd wait for you. Very
It
good.
smells pretty good.
No, the meat really soft.
Let me taste
You
it.
cook really.
Hello, you're
No,
not supposed to
no.
eat.
No, it tastes really good. They had a
I like it.
gravy.
Buba, this sauce kind of go very nice with the turkey. I do like this turkey.
Yeah,
Say
they had,
just
they had
moist,
a-
very
the
moist.
gravy real good.
The gravy
The
really.
gravy you put your with the meat really soft. Your meat with the gravy good, you can taste something real good. They go together. How about that?
So just like you said, like women, if they don't put a lot of makeup or jewelry on it, probably they just blank like a blank turkey. So they need a
Now this
earring and
is
stuff,
this
so
is good. Turkey with
It's
gravy go
good.
along with that.
I think you can, make a lot of salt and put it in a jar and have delivered to some kind of vendor. You can be famous like a Martha Stewart. She sold her sauce. Well, it's good. I like it. I would like to have a bottle of the sauce to bring home. That's my final thoughts. And what about the bread, Wu Bao?
Oh, the bread is good because
I think this is bread, not a corn bread, right?
it's this bread. I like it
From,
because it's really dense,
Different from last time.
so it absorbs all the gravy. So this is perfect for dipping gravy in mashed potatoes, which I will get in a second.
Okay, let me try stuffing.
I'll let you talk about the stuffing. Just like I said, I'm not a fan of stuffing.
Stuffing's good.
It's like they have apple in there.
Apples and pears.
Oh.
I see it. The stuffing is don't have sweet, don't have salt. This tastes like a bread. If stuffing, yeah, a little bit gravy, tastes really good. Why
Because,
you didn't put anything
because
here?
this kind's already.
recipe.
I like the mix of like peanut butter and jelly kind of stuff, like salt and kind of salty and then kind of sweet at the same time. It's good.
Oh.
It's good, and also crunchy and soft. So both pretty good.
There's a little bit of
Oh, yeah.
brandy in it. So there's
A little bit brandy. Don't get drunk, mom.
Oh, that tastes good. What do you make it? So you think this thing you make this drink people can get drunk?
Yeah, brandy in it.
That's what I think about. That's it. That tastes good. Oh my
I
god.
bet you will not like it. Tại vì nó có alcohol. But it's good. I like it. It go nice with the meal.
This is a good compliment to this turkey. I like it.
Yeah, a
warm.
little bit sour, a little bit
Sweet.
sweet and warm.
Now I feel like some apple pie. I taste a little bit of orange. Is it orange?
Well, it's just the peel.
Oh, the peel.
Brandy
I didn't see
in-
that.
Me too.
Yeah.
You taste it?
Yeah.
Can't drive.
That's why-
I can see your
Can't
face when
drive.
you drink it.
That's why
Can't
little
drive.
bit, a little bit bitter.
Oh,
A
by the
little
way,
bit
now
kind
I understand.
bland.
If you
Yeah.
have this thing and you
You
drink
won't
with this,
taste. This won't taste good anymore.
no, they combine together. Tastes good. No,
He
I know.
want us to taste
But
the
right
sweet.
now I find out I eat this, I drink this same time.
It's perfect.
They're perfect.
Right? I like
Okay.
it overall.
Okay, let me say this. This thing mixed with the drink, perfect.
Poor Wu Bao, you have two people very full OP in it.
I gave it an A+.
I give you A plus too.
I think very good. Turkey with gravy is really good. I like it. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
inviting me.
Gigi, pay attention to you and the next person next to you.
Okay. Good
Smell
health.
cinnamon.
I
Cheers.
Cheers.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Once again, happy Thanksgiving. I know it's a few days late, but I hope you enjoyed the official release of my first video and maybe you'll try out the recipe sometime. I'll post a different recipe next week from a different gaming cookbook, so don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next week.